welcome you here to the Arabian Sports Talk here on 91.7 WEEM. But if this is your first time tuning into the show, this is a podcast where the guys and I break down anything and everything sports related. But once again, alongside Ryan Davis, Lucas Cart, and Aiden Wilson, I'm Dawson Perrell. The big event on the sports schedule this week, the NFL draft, that's going to be starting April the 27th. So Thursday, it's going to be ending April 29th, the Saturday, this year's draft, the 88th edition. It'll be held down there in Kansas City. But with that being said, for today's episode, the guys and I will just be breaking down everything you guys need to know heading into that draft night. What teams are looking for who might be going a bit higher, who might be going a bit lower, just overall just giving each player a profile and breaking down the team's needs. But starting off here, of course, with that first overall pick, it originally belonged to the Chicago Bears. It was traded away just over a month ago to the Carolina Panthers in return for the Panthers wide receiver DJ Moore, the 9th overall pick, a second-round pick this year, a 2024 first-round pick, and a second-round pick in 2025. So a big package deal there, but with that, Carolina going to take that number 1 overall spot. And I think that was a good trade for the Panthers. You know, they need to make a move. They got a lot of holes throughout the roster, but everyone knows that to start a good football team, you're going to have a quarterback, and I think that's exactly why Panthers moved up. I think there's a very, very minimal percent chance that they will take a outside of a quarterback here. I think it's almost guaranteed they will be going with the quarterback. Now, the question is that going to be Alabama's Bryce Young, Ohio State's CJ Stroud? Those are really the two quarterbacks that are really in contention. There's a chance they go with Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, but I think that's not going to be an option. Personally, I could see them going with CJ Stroud. I think this is a close call here, but I think you got to look at the offensive lines. Panthers' offensive line is struggling. It's not the best. And Bryce Young, considering he's a 5'10 quarterback that likes to really live in that pocket, you're going to struggle seeing over that offensive line. You see other 5'10 quarterbacks being successful. A 5'10 doesn't mean you're going to guarantee to be a bad quarterback. Kyler Murray is one you got to look at. But when you're 5'10 and you really like to stay in that pocket, that's when problems really start to come up. So I think CJ Stroud is the better pick for the Panthers. I think he's a better scheme fit. I think Bryce Young's the better player. But in the end, I think they'll go with CJ Stroud. At least that's what I think the best choice will be. Yeah,
me personally, I'm going to go with Bryce Young on this pick. When you see CJ Stroud or Bryce Young go outside of the pocket running, Bryce Young always does way better than CJ Stroud. Whenever they had pressure going in, he always strived in that part on the run, throwing. Bryce Young always was better in that spec, and I feel like that's why they're going to pick Bryce Young.
I have the Panthers going with CJ Stroud due to Frank Wright. The past couple picks, Carson Wentz is a taller quarterback who likes to stay in the pocket. He had Nick Foles as well, who's more of a pocket passer as well.
I also agree, and something to mention, Cam Newton was a taller quarterback. Yeah, some things have changed in Carolina. I'm sure the coaches have changed. The line has changed as players obviously got older, but I think I agree with the rest of you guys with them going with that pick.
Yeah, but you look at just Bryce Young and CJ Stroud themselves, just taking a look at both of them. Of course, Bryce Young, he won the Heisman, not last year, but the year before that, the 2021-2022 season. And he's really a great quarterback. A lot of people comparing him to a younger Drew Brees. A lot of people comparing him to a Russell Wilson, where he can move around in that pocket, and he's a very accurate passer, great improviser. Teammates and coaches say he's a great leader, a great guy. You wanted that quarterback spot, but again, I think that height is just such a red flag. But again, I think this could be 50-50. I think this could go either way. But over to that second spot in the draft, of course, that belonging to the Houston Texans. The Texans, of course, another team that really has problems everywhere throughout the roster. But of course, as I was mentioning with Carolina, your problems have to start with that quarterback, and you have to fix that first before having any successful season. So I think Texans, I think they're going to go with another quarterback here. I think it's a slight chance that they go with outside of the quarterback spot, but I think it's nearly guaranteed they'll go with another quarterback here at the 2. I think the bottom line for this pick is whoever the Panthers don't pick out of CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, I think they'll take the other one, whether that's Bryce Young if Panthers pick CJ Stroud or vice versa. But I think, again, we've been talking about them. They're both great quarterbacks, and they're both going to have great careers most likely. I'd say CJ Stroud might be a bit of a riskier pick. I think Bryce Young is a very safer pick when it comes to just his skill, his highlights, his tape overall. But again, I think this will just be a 50-50. Whoever Texans don't pick out of those two, or whoever Panthers don't pick out of those two, Texans will pick up.
Yeah, I agree with you right there, Dawson. Texans have really been active this offseason, trading away Brandon Cooks, people like that. I feel like they're really trying to really rebuild this team. Their O-line really struggled. I feel like they're wanting a more mobile quarterback also.
Yeah, but the Texans in free agency, they've been able to pick up Devin Singletary from the Bills and Dalton Schwartz from the Cowboys, but I feel like they do go with whoever's remaining on the board and probably have him sit behind Davis Mills for a year.
I mean, yeah, Dawson, as you were saying, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, the obvious 1 and 2 picks. So as we have C.J. Stroud going number 1, I think Bryce Young's the only answer for the Texans.
Yeah, but over to the 3 spot in the draft, of course, that belonging to the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals definitely an interesting spot here. I mean, they have a decent core with Kyler Murray. D-Hop might be wanting out, bit of rumors about that. But overall, you got the players that you can build around. And those first 2 teams, I don't think you can really say that as much. So Panthers here, I think you're going to get on the defensive end of things. Personally, I think they're going to go with Will Anderson Jr. I think Will Anderson Jr., the bottom line is he's the best player in this draft. I think he is the top overall prospect. I mean, I remember watching him. I've watched, I think, just 2 Alabama games, a couple in those playoff bowl games, and man, he is just spectacular to watch. He has a beautiful mix of speed and strength. Had a great season last year. He was 2-time SEC Defensive Player of the Year, had won Freshman of the Year in his first year at Bama back in 2020. He's a 2-time for the Bronco New Gersicki, I'm pretty sure you say his name. I don't know. It's a trophy, and he's a 2-time winner for that. The second player to do so in the awards history. So Will Anderson Jr., obviously a very talented guy on the edge. He might struggle a bit when it comes to attacking high. He might, against some bigger offensive linemen in the NFL, he might want to learn how to attack more lower on the edge. But overall, I think, again, he's the best player in this draft. And for the Cardinals, what they're looking at, of course, they just lost J.J. Watt retiring. And on top of that, your defensive line wasn't looking so hot even before losing J.J. Watt. So I think that need is number 1 for the Cardinals. And with that, I think they're going to go with Bama edge rusher Will Anderson.
Yeah, I agree with you. Will Anderson's a great pick for that. The Cardinals really need almost all defensive spots right now. Losing their key safety, he's winning out right now. And I mean, Will Anderson, you said, probably the best player right now on defense.
I also agree with Dawson and Ryan going with Will Anderson Jr. because he would be a great replacement for Zach Allen, who just left in free agency, and they picked up Kazir White from the Eagles to fill that other edge position, but they kind of need more depth in that area.
I mean, yeah, he is the best prospect out of the quarterbacks, besides for the quarterbacks this year. And with his 40-yard dash, just to mention it being 4.6 seconds, that is something that is very well mentioning. But yeah, I have him going there too.
Yeah, but you move on to the hometown team here at Indianapolis Colts, of course. Definitely not the season these last couple of years, really not the years you want to remember as a Colts fan, of course. In my opinion, one of the most somber stories just in this last 5-10 years. Of course, you had Andrew Luck. You were looking like a contender, but then all went wrong there. Of course, we've heard that so many times, so we won't really recap that too much. But the Colts really in these last 5 years have had a weird trend of just veteran quarterbacks. You had Matt Ryan. You had Carson Wentz for a year. Phillip Rivers, of course. So I think the bottom line is Colts need a quarterback. They need a young guy that their fan base can get excited about, that can really put on a show. And I think you got to look to Anthony Richardson. I mean, talk about putting on a show. The man destroyed the combine, had hands down the best performance in Indy at the combine. And on top of that, I mean, sure, he might struggle in the college season. He has a weird scheme in Florida. They like to run a lot of pass RPOs. A lot of weird plays. But the bottom line, he's a freak of an athlete. And although I think Anthony Richardson is the biggest bust potential, I think he also has the most boom potential. I think this is a hit or a miss in my opinion. I think he's either going to be a stellar quarterback in the NFL or really just lacking. Of course, he has lack of the quarterback position. He played a lot of wide receiver. He played a lot of other positions in high school. Didn't do too hot at Florida when it comes to the stat side of things. But the bottom line is he is an athletic freak, and I think that's exactly what Indianapolis needs. As I was just mentioning, they need a guy that the fan base can get excited about, that can rally around and really lead them into something better.
Yeah, they have the weapons for Anthony Richardson, and when the Colts strided was when Andrew Luck was there. He was a pretty mobile quarterback, and I feel like it's a good pick going back to what they were used to, being mobile. You have Michael Pittman, but you let a lot of people walk. You had a lot of defensive also, so I feel like they have to watch out for defensive players also.
I feel like it depends on what this new coach wants to do, but it depends on Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. So far, it's a toss-up, but stat-wise, I would go with Anthony Richardson because he's 6'4", he runs a 4.3. Sure, he's lower ranked than Will Levis at 31st best, but overall, he has the size and athleticism.
I mean, yeah, I think Anthony Richardson is the best pick for Indianapolis. As we know, the Indianapolis Colts did get the Eagles offensive coordinator. So another runner in the quarterback spot, that is something that the offensive coordinator is used to. And as you were mentioning, Andrew Luck, these are scramblers. Anthony Richardson is a scrambler. And Dawson, as you were mentioning, he's a very good athlete. And even in the draft combine, he did list himself as an athlete, not even a quarterback.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, he does have bust potential, but he also has very high ceiling. So I think the Colts, the safe pick is to go with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, but you look over to the fifth pick in the draft, moving forward now over to the Seattle Seahawks. Originally, that pick belonged to the Denver Broncos, but of course, in that Russell Wilson trade, they got them that 2023 first rounder, and it definitely went in a good way as that one rising all the way up to fifth. But for Seattle Seahawks here, of course, you just re-signed Geno Smith. Geno, definitely the surprise player this year. Obviously, he has a history of just being a very, very bad quarterback, I guess you could say lightly. But this year, he definitely surprised a lot of people over there in Seattle under Pete Carroll, whether it was just the scheme matching up. But Seattle looked very well. They have a very bright future. In my opinion, they had the best draft last year. You look at players like Tariq Woolen they picked up, of course, Kenneth Walker Jr., a absolute freak in that running back spot. And of course, you also have some veteran pieces. Tyler Lockett is there, DK Metcalf, who's reaching that veteran status. But I think for Seattle here, you're going to focus on the defensive side of the ball. Ever since that Legion of Boom all the way back in the day, they've really been lacking on the defensive spot. Of course, they have some potential with Jamal Adams back there, along with, as I was mentioning, the new rookie with Tariq Woolen. But the bottom line is they need some padding on the defensive side of the ball, and I think they're going to go to that with Jalen Carter from Georgia. Jalen Carter, in my opinion, is one of the better players in this draft. I know a couple experts, a couple analysts at the professional level are saying he is the best player in this draft. Of course, had some trouble off the field with some controversy, but other than that, I think on the field, he's a beast. His stock is slowly rising back up. It was a bit of a drop after that off the field trouble, but it's rising back up. He's getting that behind him. And then you just look at him specifically. He has elite quickness. He can get it done. Very, very big dude, obviously, sitting on the interior, but still has some nice quickness inside there. And of course, his size is there as well. Definitely part of him. He's 314 on the weight column. He's 6'3" and can really get it done. So I think that'll be a great addition to Seattle. And if he does end up hitting, I think Seattle could be a very big contender next year.
Yeah, I agree with Jalen Carter on that pick. It's kind of hard to really compare to the Legion of Boom. That was such a great defense. But you all getting Jalen Carter on one of the most dominant defenses in college, only allowing, I can't remember the exact score, but TCU only like 6 points.
Yeah.
That's impressive. They're mainly an offensive team for TCU. And I mean, he was one of the leaders for that team, and I feel like he would really stride in Seattle.
I could see him going with Tyree Wilson because the edge is kind of struggling in Seattle. Their linebacker core has been, ever since Bobby Wagner left, has not been the best, and Tyree Wilson has been rising up on the boards as well.
Yeah, but I do see them going with Jalen Carter. As me and Dawson were talking about the other day, his college, Georgia, their scheme is very similar to Seattle, so I think that will come in mind when they do have that draft pick available. But something to mention, his pass rush on listed, it is a 99%, and that is definitely something that Seattle needs. Therefore, I see them definitely drafting Jalen Carter.
Yeah, and I think there is some talk for Seattle to go with a quarterback. As of course, I was just mentioning there with Geno Smith. They just re-signed him. But of course, he's not only is he struggling in the past, but he's getting to that age. So I don't think it's out of the picture they go with the quarterback at that spot. But I think as of now, I think they focus on what they need the most, and that is the defensive line. But you move forward now to the Lions pick, the 6th pick in the draft. Of course, that pick originally belonged to the Los Angeles Rams, but in that Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade, the Lions received that one, and using that one to good use as well as, of course, that one a very high top 6 or top 6 pick, top 10 really. But the Lions, you zoom out, look at them. Of course, you got, I would say, a very, very good quarterback at Jared Goff. I think Goff was one of the more underrated quarterbacks this year. I think he was top 10 in both passing yards, passing touchdowns. I think he had top 10 fewest interceptions, top 10 QBR, and really had a year that one of the best years he's had in quite a while. But for the Lions, of course, you did just lose Jamal Williams on that running back spot. You also have DeAndre Swift, so I don't think that's a need. So I think you're going to look more on the defensive side of the ball for the Lions. That was definitely their struggle this year, was defense. Obviously, they were very close to that playoff, but unfortunately, were just a bit too short. I think they're going to go here with an edge rusher in Lucas Van Ness. I think this guy's a very slept-on prospect. He's very low on a lot of people's boards, but I think out of Iowa, this guy obviously sees some fierce competition in the Big Ten, especially with that running game, and he definitely handles that very well. I think the Lions need an edge rusher, and I think Luke Van Ness with a nice mix of speed, power, and agility, this guy can get it done and get you those big hits on big plays.
Yeah, I feel like, as you said, offense, they have everything right now with Jared Goff and people like that. But as you said, they were struggling with defense, but they were second worst in passing defense. Their secondary was not doing very well, so I feel like they go with a cornerback here with Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois. They really haven't had a very good cornerback in a really long time. I feel like that would be a great pick for them.
I feel like they go for the replacement of Jeff Okuda, who just got traded for a 5th round and I believe a 2nd round, but I feel like they go with Christian Gonzalez just due to the size and the speed compared to Witherspoon.
Well, Dawson, as you were saying, Lucas Van Ness, he is an edge rusher, which Lions do need because, I mean, their defense, they did play good throughout the season with their coach, especially getting his spark this season, as we all know, his pregame talks and even his postgame talks. But something the Lions do need is somebody on that line, and I feel like Lucas Van Ness is that person.
Yeah, but as Ryan and Lucas are talking about, they need a corner as well. But I think the only question was is if you need a corner, why would you trade away Jeff Okuda? I think they might be thinking of other things in that front office, other ways to go. Of course, they drafted Aiden Hutchinson last year, and he ended up to be a great rookie. I think he was one of the top 3, I would say, on that defensive side of the ball. And I think that might draw a lot of people away from the Lions picking an edge there because back-to-back edges in back years might seem a bit weird, but I think that's where they need the most help at the bottom line. So I think that's where they'll go. But a corner definitely not out of the picture, as Lucas and Ryan was saying. But you move on to the 7th pick in the draft, that one belonging to, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, another team that they need a lot of positions. Of course, they just lost Derek Carr. I guess they didn't really lose him, but they just let him walk. And then on top of that, they did bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, which can be a very solid bridge quarterback to get you to that franchise. But I think as of now, the Raiders do need to look at the quarterback position and think who we need for the future. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a veteran, and I think he can play that starting quarterback role hands down. I mean, he's done that for so long for the 49ers, but the bottom line is you need a guy that's young in the quarterback room that can build up and maybe get you a better future. I think, sure, you need a lot of spots all over the place. Cornerback is a huge need for the Raiders. Offensive line, still a bit of a need. You had a solid draft. You reached on Leatherwood last year, but I think the bottom lines are going to go with the quarterback here, and of course, the one that's really left on this board with Will Levis out of Kentucky. Will is a great quarterback. Didn't really have the best stats for college. You just look at his, probably the weakest out of the top 4 quarterback candidates in this draft. And a lot of people had him dropping here recently. You looked at NFL Draft Buzz on the big board for them. They have him ranked at 27th. They have him ranked behind Hendon Hooker for the quarterbacks. But the bottom line is Will Levis has a heck of an arm. He's standing at 6'4", very tall, great stature. And overall, I mean, outside of the stat side of things, you can't really find too many things wrong about him. He struggles a bit with decision-making and interceptions, but other than that, I mean, he has a great arm. He can move around in the pocket. He can improvise, and I think he'll be a great fit for the Raiders, sitting maybe under Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he could be a day one starter, but I think he could build up to that spot.
Yeah, Will Levis is a great pick right there because Jimmy Garoppolo he's had a lot of experience being behind Tom Brady, now starting with the 49ers, and I mean, he's played well, almost winning he has had a Super Bowl not starting, but almost winning a Super Bowl with the 49ers. I feel like Will Levis is a good pick, not being a day one starter, but I feel like also they have to look into defensive side of things, maybe get a secondary. They've really struggled with that also.
I feel like they could go with Peter Skranotsky out of Northwestern because that offensive line in Vegas is one of the worst in the league because Jimmy Garoppolo is a pocket passer. So if you want to build around him and get a quarterback in the later round, going with an offensive lineman could be safe for your initial future.
But it is a smart move that they could make. But Dawson, as you were mentioning in the very beginning, an offense does start off with the quarterback. And as you were saying for Will Levis, he does have a problem of throwing a lot of interceptions. But with Derek Carr being in Las Vegas for so long and eventually becoming possibly a Hall of Famer, I think that they could do the same thing for Will Levis and even adapt him and improve him through his career if they do draft him.
Yeah, but obviously, definitely a controversial pick there. I'd say that Raiders pick is really the first one where they could go so many options there. But moving on, of course, to the 8th pick in the draft, that belonging to the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, an interesting team. You know, they got a decent core with Drake London on the offensive side of the ball. You still got Kyle Pitts, who had a maybe underperforming season, but of course still has loads of potential. You got a decent quarterback. Of course, Ritter still is a bit questionable. Maybe not the best pick there for them, but I still think that the Falcons here could go several different ways with this pick. I think they need a lot on the defensive side of the ball. They need an edge rusher to pair up with Grady Jarrin, I'm pretty sure his name is. So I think they need an edge rusher to pair up with him, and I think that's exactly where they're going to go. More specifically, I think here they're going to go with Myles Murphy out of Clemson. Myles Murphy is one of those guys. He's been flying up and down the big boards, has never really sat at a spot for his draft stock. And I think he's definitely rising up here. Again, looking at NFLDraftBuzz.com and their big board, they have him at 6th for all positions. They have him at 2nd for edges, of course, behind Will Anderson Jr. But you look at Myles Murphy, just him a bit closer, of course, out of Clemson. Another one of those guys that can get it done on the edge, can hit the quarterback, and on top of that, has a great mix of strength and speed. He was a 5-star coming out of high school, at least according to ESPN. He really does a great job when it goes to winning that speed to power, has great leg drive that can really push those blockers back. He's very versatile. And I think that'll be a great pick. Of course, you look at Atlanta Falcons, as I was just mentioning, probably the number one spot for them is defense. You can maybe go with the corner here, but I think the edge is their number one need. And the bottom line is they're going to go with edge there. It doesn't have to be Myles Murphy, but I think Myles Murphy is the best one on the board.
Yeah, Myles Murphy's the great pick here. I think me and you, Dawson, have had the same picks except for the first and second. But I mean, Myles Murphy, you can't really argue. 4.53 40 time at 6'5". And 268 pounds. That's kind of it's gonna be difficult to move.
I honestly think they go with Myles Murphy, but I don't think that Atlanta's drafting a quarterback because they signed Taylor Heineke on a free agency, like on a $20 million deal, so he could possibly have a quarterback competition with Ritter down in Atlanta.
But yeah, as the three of us said, Myles Murphy does seem like the best prospect for the Falcons. I mean, Dawson, as you were saying, their offense is very solid. I just think they need one more piece on defense, and Myles Murphy seems to be that piece that they could need.
Yeah, but you look over now to the 9th pick, that belonging to now the Chicago Bears. Of course, that originally belonged to the Carolina Panthers, but as I mentioned in that first pick, that one was traded in that trade about a month ago. So Bears, of course, you look at them, they have their quarterback with Justin Fields, obviously had a breakout year last year as a great scrambling quarterback, a very slippery guy. And on top of that, your defense isn't horrible, I would say. I think your defense is solid. Of course, you got some decent pieces back there, but overall, I think your bottom line is the Bears' number one need is offensive line. I think you're going to have to build around Justin Fields at this point. I think he's definitely the lock in for that. And there's a lot of different tackles here they can take. There's not too many guards really top 10, top 20 in this draft on the big boards, but plenty of tackles, so I think they will go with the tackle here. More specifically, I think they're going to go with Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern. Of course, Lucas was talking about him a bit earlier and just really about his player profile, what he is all about. And I think he's a great tackle. I think is the best one here on the board. He's had some controversy more about his size and his really strength to get it done at the tackle spot, but I think he'll be able to do so. And again, building around Justin Fields, I think is the Bears' number one need right now.
Yeah, you got your key wide receiver coming out of Carolina now, DJ Moore going to be your wide receiver one. Then you also have Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, two other ones that you also have to look out for. So you said you really need an offensive lineman. You can go with Peter Skoronski. I don't know how to really say his name. And then Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. Their O-line was very dominant last year in college. I feel like he could be also a great pick.
I actually have Broderick Jones because if you want a speed tackle for Justin Fields to run behind, if you want to do some options and have a tackle get to the second level, it is Broderick Jones. He is a foot smaller than Paris Johnson Jr. at 6'5", but he runs a 4.97 40 times. So if you want a mobile tackle that can get to the second level, he's your guy.
And Ryan, as you were saying, I also have Paris Johnson Jr. just because I feel like he is the strongest and most promising at that position. Dawson, as you were saying, there is other prospects there, but they do lack in some spots. And with Paris Johnson being 6'6", 313, I really think that's something that can sit Justin Fields in that pocket and get him more comfortable with that Bears team.
We just look forward to the 10th pick now. This will be the final pick we'll cover here on this episode. This one belonging to the Philadelphia Eagles, of course. Aiden, that's your team over there in Philly. For Philadelphia, I think they're in a great spot. Obviously, they're coming off of a Super Bowl runner-up, just fell short to the Chiefs. And on top of that, you have a top 10 pick. I mean, you got to be happy for the Philadelphia. Of course, you're going to be losing a decent amount of players over the offseason. They already lost a couple, but I still think they're future is huge. Of course, they just re-signed Jalen Hurts to that gigantic deal, getting paid over $50 million a year now. So obviously, you 100% have your quarterback locked there. So I think for the Eagles, their main concern right now is cornerback. I think although you have dominant quarterbacks or cornerback, sorry about that, with Darius Slay and what's the other dude?
Bradbury.
Yeah.
I
totally forgot
out there.
Yeah, but Bradbury and Slay, of course, they're both dominant quarterbacks, but they're both a bit getting to that age. So I think you're going to get some youth behind them that can not only eventually take over for those two guys, but on top of that can really learn underneath them and become such a dominant guy. And I think you're going to look here to Devon Witherspoon. I haven't taken a quarterback yet on my top 10. I think they're going to go with Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois. I remember watching him when Purdue faced them in the fall, and man, he is a tough player to get around. Of course, Charlie Jones for Purdue, wide receiver. He's our wide receiver. He was our wide receiver number one last season. He was facing up against Devon Witherspoon, and when he faced up against him, I'm pretty sure that was the worst game he had the season. So he's a dominant corner. He'll get it done. Ton of potential, and of course, with the Eagles needing that, as I was just mentioning, I think that's the pick for them. If not Devon Witherspoon, of course, there's other corners in those spot. Christian Gonzalez, his name's already been mentioned, but I think Witherspoon's the best.
Yeah, I got Christian Gonzalez going to the Eagles. I already had Devon Witherspoon going earlier, but I mean, you really couldn't go wrong with them. I don't think anyone right now for the Eagles having so many weapons. I mean, you can go with maybe an offensive tackle because a lot of those players on that line are getting up there in age. Jason Kelsey, people like that are getting up there. I feel like you really can't go wrong with anyone.
I'm actually going to say Brian Branch due to safety and C.J. Gardner-Johnson left in free agency, and Avon Maddox, he's unknown due to injury. So if you want a safer pick, go with Brian Branch due to fill that void.
But yeah, obviously, as we were talking about, there is two positions to fill for Philadelphia. Ryan mentioning that our line is getting older with Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. I mean, there's all those people, Jason Kelsey even, getting old, and our corners not being so reliant anymore. I mean, they're still good, as you would say, but as Dawson was saying, they are getting older. And losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson in that backfield, I feel like something that you need now, though, to solidify your spot for next year is that cornerback position. Therefore, I have them taking Devon Witherspoon. I feel like he fits Philadelphia's scheme very well. Dawson, as you were saying, he is tough to get around. And we like our corners and safeties to be fast and hands-on. So I feel like he definitely is that solidified pick for number 10.
Yeah, but we have just a few minutes here. So for this final about 4 minutes or so, what I just want to do is I want to go around the circle. Of course, Aiden, we already covered your favorite team, but really just for my favorite team, of course, the Saints. You can see I'm wearing the hoodie. Ryan got the Packers, Lucas, Colts. I'm right on that. Yeah, Colts, of course, we already covered them a bit, but you guys can go more in depth. But more about the Saints and the Packers, just seeing who would you guys want to see on your favorite team. Starting off, personally for the Saints. Of course, very, very low pick there with the 29th, originally belonging to the 49ers. That pick got thrown around multiple times. It looked like it was going to stay with the Broncos, but of course, after that Sean Payton signing, they gave us a first round in return. Personally, of course, it's hard to predict these late round picks because the board could be looking totally different than what you're predicting it to be. But around just looking at the numbers here and who I think could reach us is Brian Brucey out of Clemson. I think he was very high on the big boards originally on that defensive line. I should say defensive lineman, but he fell down a bit, and I think he's going to fall right in our laps. Another player I want to mention out of Pitt, totally forget his name, looking for him. Yeah. Kalija Cansey, I think. I don't know how to say his name, but he's a beast. I love him. Obviously, you look at dominant defensive linemen out of Pitt, and your eyes go directly to Aaron Donald. So I think Pitt's definitely got their graduates of defensive linemen that have pro success. And on top of that, he looks very similar to Aaron Donald. I remember seeing an Instagram post a couple of weeks back around the combine time where it compared him and Aaron Donald's combine stats, and they're nearly identical. So I think you look at that, and of course, Saints desperately needing defensive line. You just let the Davenport walk. And on top of that, Cameron Jordan getting a bit older. I think you're going to go with defensive lineman here. And I think one of those two guys I'd be very, very happy with.
Yeah, for the Packers, not a very good season for us last year. With Aaron Rodgers probably going to the Jets. You already have Jordan Love getting the first round pick a few years ago. But I think we really need a wide receiver. Letting Alan Lazard walk also. Marcos Valdez-Scantling 2 years ago. Really feel like we need another wide receiver. Cutting Sammy Watkins in the middle of the season also. Feel like Jackson Smith-Njigba or Quentin Johnson out of TCU and Ohio State. Those are two solid picks. I mean, Christian Watson has the speed for it. Feel like adding a second one on there is going to be pretty good.
So for the Colts, I feel like in a later round they could get Tank Dell out of Houston, like they did with Philip Dorsett a couple years ago, a very talented slot receiver. Alec Pierce had a underwhelming season last year, but he still had great plays, but they need a slot receiver.
Yeah, I mean, for Philadelphia, obviously you could argue there isn't much to improve on this team as they were in the Super Bowl last year. But as we were speaking about earlier, their line is getting old, and somebody that I would like to see but is probably not going to happen, as I said earlier, Jalen Carter. I would really like him to go there just because he is so dominant in that position. And with our defense being kind of iffy in the Super Bowl, we kind of fell under pressure. I feel like he could be the person that could bring that energy, but I don't see us drafting him.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I'd say I wouldn't necessarily say get your hopes up, but we've seen players fall like that before in the past. But one last player I want to point out here just before we finish up the episode, one player that has been very, very much trending in these last couple of weeks, Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker. You look at Hendon Hooker, where he's been at, of course, very early, I'd say, after the college football season, he was pretty low, I'd say, on a lot of people's boards, and that's really because of his age. He's 25. I mean, he's definitely older than some of these quarterbacks, but recently he's been climbing up. NFL Draft Buzz has him on 23rd overall big board. They have him at the third-ranked quarterback, and I mean, I think he deserves it by all means. I mean, you just look at some of his stats. I'm pretty sure last year he had 27 or so touchdowns compared to only 2 interceptions on the year, which is just an outstanding stat. He can get it done at all levels, but of course, with that age being a problem, I'm pretty interested to see where it falls. And as a Saints fan, I mean, we have the 10th pick in the second round. I think personally, I would love to see him in a Saints uniform underneath Derek Carr. I think having that more mentorship for a rookie and maybe even building him up to a franchise quarterback wouldn't be I would definitely be happy with that. Of course, that being a problem for us ever since we lost Drew Brees. But yeah, taking a look at his stats, as I was mentioning, he had 27 touchdowns, 2 picks, had 3,000 yards last year. My opinion, very much deserved to be a Heisman finalist. I don't think he was, but again, I think he should have been. I mean, of course, a dominating season, so I'd love to see him. But with that, that'll do it for our episode here today. Be sure to tune in on our next week. Of course, schedule is a bit iffy right now. I'd say just expect a new episode in that first half of the week, either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. But we'll let you know on on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We'll let you know whenever a new episode's being posted. But for next week, you can expect us doing sports hot takes. Just overall, we'll just be breaking breaking down all of our hot takes all time and really just debating all of those. So I'm pretty excited about that episode, but we hope you all enjoyed. For Ryan Davis, Lucas Card, Aiden Wilson, I'm Dawson Parrell, and we hope you all have a nice day. You're listening to 91.7 WEEM.